This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 440 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Wednesday's cup fight at the Ruhrstadion, which saw Dortmund go through to the quarterfinals of the DFB Pokal. We will preview Saturday's match away to Werder Bremen, and we will preview Tuesday's Champions League home leg against FC Chelsea. For all that and more, joins me Danny Lützner. Hello Danny, it is great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Hi Stefan. Yeah, glad to be finally here, and I think it's a great time to talk football, especially Dortmund, so yeah.
It is a great time.
So, it is. It actually is.
Yeah, so let me introduce Danny. He is a football data scout, and he's a work colleague of mine, hence the connection, and he is, of course, also a Borussia Dortmund fan, for better or worse. Danny, if you have any other details about you that you want to tell our listeners, be my guest.
Yeah, so my name's Danny. Been a lifelong Dortmund fan my entire life, and I live in the UK, work as a football data scout here, and moved to the UK in 2018, so not been in Dortmund as much as I wanted to watch some games, but yeah, tried to catch up every game. Like yesterday, unfortunately, there was no availability to watch the game for free on British television, so yeah, had to get a stream yesterday for £15.
Jesus.
So yeah, that's what you have to do when you watch a classic derby at Bochum. So,
well, it really was a classic, because obviously it was to me it was a great game because I don't know if it's a game for the football connoisseur. I don't know, but for me as a guy from Dortmund, this was a nice review derby. You had an awful, terrible pitch. You had a mid to lower league table team, and VfL Bochum really came out with a fight, and so did Dortmund. It was a really hotly contested match. You had great pyrotechnics in the away stand, and just a really gritty game that Dortmund prevailed from. And if you compare that game to the loss to St. Pauli last season, the infamous cup exit where Dortmund have been heavily criticized for their performance then, I think we saw an entirely different team, entirely different mentality, entirely different approach to the game, because Dortmund did get stuck in, if you will. In these kind of games, this is actually what counts for the most part. And was it the best footballing game from Dortmund? Probably not. But I personally am just very happy with the performance, because from the first minute on, they were right at the same pace where Bochum were, and they did not yield any space. So yeah, it got a little chaotic, but nevertheless, I thought it was a highly entertaining game. What did you make out of the first half and the lineup? It was Ryerson back as a left back in for Guerrero. We had Mats Hummels starting instead of Schlotterbeck and Niklas Süle. In central defense, Marius Wolf was the right back, and then Emre Can, the holding midfielder, and Charlie Özcan coming back from suspension in midfield next to Jude Bellingham. And then you had Bynoe-Gittens, who replaced the suspended Adeyemi, and Julian Brandt and Sebastian Aller also up front.
So yeah, I mean, you basically summed it up quite well. I think that if that game would have been played in September last year, Bochum would have beaten us quite easily, because we had a completely different mentality a couple of months back, and this game really showed how far this team has come in the last month or two. We took them exactly what they gave us. We basically, as you said, like, we were there. It was just a typical cup fight, and Bochum is a dangerous team to play currently. They have a fantastic mix of experienced players very dangerous counter forwards / wingers with Asano, and you have a classic target man with Hofmann up front. So it was a really, really tough game for Dortmund. And at Bochum is never easy for Dortmund historically. So I was really impressed with the attitude. And I think when we saw the lineup with Can and Can in the central midfield, it was clear what game it will be. It won't be pretty. It won't be a spectacular 3-4, 5-0. It had to be a gritty game, and I'm actually quite proud to witness that Dortmund is able to win these games now. Because even in the second half, after the 1-1, obviously there was some kind of feeling in the air at the Ruhr Stadion, but at no time was I really scared that we would really lose this game. And it just shows how far we've come in the last couple of weeks. So yeah, it was a good game to watch, especially for neutrals, because there was everything in that game that you want to see. So yeah, very happy.
Well, I think neutrals would be rooting for the upset maybe, but that of course did not materialize. However, I think you got it absolutely right when you said that Dortmund took pretty much what Bochum gave them. Obviously, the first two chances, I would say Sebastian Aller, when he slipped during a shot and sailed over the bar, and a couple of minutes later, it was Jamie Bynoe-Gittens who also had a very promising attempt that he also just put over the bar. A little bit annoying, but you know what? If you shoot over the goal, then you just need to shoot from further back, and that's exactly what Emre Can did, because he did Riemann for his clearance very far out the pitch. And was it the prettiest and the best hit from Emre Can? It was not, but it has this wicked spin, probably a top spin and a weird bounce. And Riemann just he was chasing, but he could just not get the ball, and it was a hilarious goal, and a typical cup goal, if you will, to go ahead. I think VfL Bochum themselves have been involved in a lot of long distance goals now. I think they did it to Hoffenheim, and if I'm not mistaken, earlier in the season in Dortmund's 3-0 win, Dortmund also had a weird long distance goal. So, I think that was a very important goal for Dortmund to score it right in the stoppage time of the first half. And to me, it really did feel like that it was almost in the bag at that point. Obviously, VfL Bochum can always be a threat on set pieces and stuff like that. But I feel like they lacked composure once they came closer to the box. But in the second half, I think it changed a little bit because Marius Wolf had to come off. The guys on ESPN said that he was feeling his hamstring, but today Kicker does report that it is more of a shoulder injury, and he is now going through checkups, but it is apparently not severe, so fingers crossed, because Marius Wolf, of course, is right now pretty important to Dortmund. And you could immediately see when Nico Schlotterbeck came in, and Niklas Süle went to the right. Hummels also moved one to the right. And then you could see that Antwi Ajay ran at Mats Hummels a little bit more. And I think before the penalty occurred, there were 2 or 3 really promising chances that Gregor Kobel once again had to save. I think one was slightly offside, and since VAR was in action, I think that would have been reviewed, but nevertheless, 2 very good saves, 1v1, one where he blocked the ball, the shot rather, and the other one where he basically took the ball off Antwi Ajay. And to me, once again, big saves, and just showed how important Marius Wolf is for the structure, and of course how important it was to have Niklas Süle in that area of the field on the right side, basically, of center half, because his pace really did well against Antwi Ajay. And once Mats Hummels had to go 1v1 with him, it did not look so great. So from that perspective, I think that was sort of the biggest change of the game, which really gave Bochum a bit of the upper hand for like 10-15 minutes or so. And obviously I don't know if you want to talk about the very controversial penalty call. I certainly do want to talk about it because, first of all, the referee was Tobias Stieler, who is the same referee that famously did not award the handball when Boateng blocked Haaland's shot with his elbow in 2019.
Yes.
I think for context that's important because I think this, it did hit Jamie Bynoe-Gittens at the elbow, but obviously his elbow was far closer to the rest of his body, and he did turn around. I personally feel like the handball rule is very hard to grasp for me at this point, and to me these decisions feel very random, but first of all, I think that Bynoe-Gittens was simply fouled beforehand. He was just shoved away, and then
Absolutely.
and then this handball, I don't know. I don't think it should have been a call, and then for the review to take actually 4 minutes, it's just ridiculous. What's your opinion on that, Danny?
I mean, where should we start? It's first of all, as you said, it's a clear foul before the situation even begins. But for me, the biggest issue is just, okay, so for you, for Stieler, clearly it wasn't a foul, which, okay, it's even more controversial than the ultimate decision to give a penalty. But what bothered me the most not just as a Dortmund fan, but as a football fan, and seeing how VAR or a video assistant referee is being used in different sports now, in basketball, in rugby, it is much more transparent. In those 4 minutes, basically no one had any idea what was communicated between Stieler and the video assistant referee team. No one knew what is exactly being checked. Why is that being checked, but the push is not being checked? What are the criteria of a handball these days? Because as you've said, it's not consistent. It is absolutely ludicrous how this is a penalty, and I think it was 5 or 10 minutes later on the other side, I think Janko, he got the ball on his hand, and it was a similar situation to the one that you just mentioned with Boateng a couple of years back. And yeah, there is no consistency, and as long as we don't have any clear transparency or communication between referees and their assistants, it will never be a system that will work for football fans. And yeah, that's basically all I can say to this, because I'm still mad about it.
Yeah, so am I, and I've basically just accepted the fact that it's screwed up, and I don't know. It does need reform, and we all know, as you said, transparency is probably the biggest one. I don't know if they showed on the video screens in the stadiums by now what exactly the referee is reviewing, but they should. And on top of that, I think the referee should also have a way to communicate with the entire stadium and announce his decision and not just explain it. Obviously, that would be a very big step for the sport. It's very commonplace in other sports, but nevertheless, I think if you have such a long review, there should be more transparency. I think Stieler had an interview with German TV afterwards to explain his decision, but unfortunately, I did not see it, and I also don't care, because his decision was plainly wrong, and whatever he did to explain it, I think it took so long because they couldn't quite figure out whether it was on the line or outside of the penalty area. But very frustrating, if you ask me, to watch this and then for it to actually stand, because I was pretty convinced that it was, once he went to the review area, that he was going to take 2 looks at it and then just call it off. But it was not the case. But the good news is, once Stöger converted from the penalty spot in the 64th minute, Terzic made 2 more subs. He brought Anthony Modeste in for Sebastian Aller, and he brought Marco Reus in for Jamie Bynoe-Gittens, who I think struggled quite a lot because of the intensity of the game. And you can see that Jamie Bynoe-Gittens isn't quite there yet to really, be within that hustle. So he didn't really have much space to run into because he was quickly doubled. So was Julian Brandt, by the way. I think Bochum did very well to take these two creative players, if you will, out of the game. Marco Reus came in, of course, and it took, 5 minutes or so, and Dortmund actually created a beautiful goal. I was positively surprised to see Charlie Özcan play that through ball to Jude Bellingham, who made a really great run, because if you see the build-up, when before Özcan received the ball, he was actually pointing to Süle to play it sideways, and Süle was like, screw you, I'm just going to pass it to you. And then Özcan just turned around and passed it to Bellingham. And you could see at this point in the game that Bochum just didn't have the energy anymore to really close down Dortmund as well as they did beforehand. That was something what I was sort of waiting for, watching the entire first half, looking at the intensity and knowing the quality that Dortmund can bring off the bench nowadays. And Jude Bellingham, excellent. Square off to Marco Reus, who had a tap in that I am very confident that you and me both would have arguably finished. Although who knows with this pitch. But I don't know what else to say about this game really, other than that Gregor Kobel had, I think it was an Instagram story or so on the pitch, where he really praised Ryerson. I think he called him like a Norwegian endurance runner or something like that, praising him for sprinting up and down the field the entire game. And to me, I feel like Ryerson, especially in a game like this, you can see the quality that he brings. And since it's your first time, maybe your thoughts on our left back / right back.
Honestly, when the news came out to him, he was one of many at Union Berlin. He was not really a standout player, because that's not who he is. He has always been an kind of under the radar guy, but someone who is just putting in the work. And he's exactly the type of player that we needed, because we had someone like Meunier, who much more talented as a footballer, much more technical. He brings a lot potentially moving forward, but he can't defend. His hours and his defensive position is god awful. But Reimann, who is a mold in our team that potentially didn't Pistons Großkreuz, he's exactly what we needed in that position, especially with, let's say we play with Guerrero on the left. There is an imbalance in our team, because on the left you push forward, you have a creative left back whose crossing is phenomenal, who can even make a run, is quite comfortable on the ball. Ryerson is someone who will stabilize our defense, and yet perfect example why we got him, because he accepts his role. If he plays right back, left back, he just fits exactly the needs that we had. And I know that we both are big fans of Matteo Murray. He's a player that he will be with us for a long time, because we absolutely need him. And you can plug it easily in as a left back as well, as I said. And I think he's a very, very good buy for January transfer window. So we did well there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Apologies to the listeners, because you've been breaking up a little bit there. I don't think I can recover it. Now Dortmund obviously move on to the next round, and in the quarterfinal, I don't think it will be much easier, to be honest. I think I don't have it in front of me, but I think the opponents left will be Bayern, Freiburg, Frankfurt, Nürnberg and Stuttgart are in there as well, and someone else I've since forgotten about, but Union Berlin are also in there. So either way, whatever the draw is, it's probably going to be a tricky draw, and I'm already looking forward to the next round. But Dortmund do look strong right now. But obviously now the question is, can they maintain that momentum against Werder Bremen, who are, of course, in 8th place in the Bundesliga. They have the 3rd worst defense. They have conceded 37 goals and the 8th best attack with 31 goals. So their goal difference right now is -6. And what I find interesting is that Niklas Füllkrug currently, and I did not know that, the league in scoring, he is the league leader, the leading goal scorer with 13 goals to his name. The second best goal scorer on Werder Bremen is, of course, none other than Dortmund's own Marvin Duksch, and I think he has scored 4 or so. But yeah, they also share a lot of assists between each other because Duksch and Füllkrug, to me, are one of the best striker pairing we have in the Bundesliga right now. And of course, as we all know, Dortmund in the reverse fixture were 2-0 up until the stoppage time, and they did not deserve to be 2-0 up, to be honest. But then Werder Bremen scored 3 goals in very quick succession, which is probably one of the biggest fumbles in Dortmund history. And I think the Bremen coach already said today or the other day that the last game doesn't really matter. Well, it matters to me because I'm out for revenge. I think Dortmund have something to make up for here. And going away to Werder Bremen is just never easy for Dortmund. I think it was Edin Tesic's very first match as an interim coach back then was against Werder Bremen. It was a very ugly 2-1 win. And I mean, I take one again because right now, it's all about getting 3 points and staying in this title race, however long you can, to keep us all excited and hopeful. And yeah, beating Werder Bremen away from home will just not be easy because they are very hard to defend. But Danny, obviously, we just talked a lot about the Bochum game and what qualities stood out from a Dortmund perspective there. But in general, if you look at how the Bundesliga campaign has been going since the restart, how optimistic are you that Dortmund can come away with all 3 points from the Weserstadion? And more importantly, what are sort of the trends and tendencies that you have observed that make you positive overall about Dortmund and their league campaign right now?
So yeah, I mean, since the restart of the Bundesliga, Dortmund has looked still shaky in the first, I would say, 2 games, especially the home win against Augsburg. But since then, seeing how we plugged in Haller, how we changed our system, how we moved on from maybe accepting that a 1 or 2-0 win like we did in Leverkusen is enough to keep 3 points. That's all we need to do to keep it tight, to stay in the race. And especially having Haller back is going to change dramatically our offense. You've already seen that Adeyemi is much more comfortable being around a tall focal point in the offense. He's still not there where he could be, but he is definitely progressing in a good way. Brandt is playing probably the most successful football of his career. He is creating a ton of chances. He's creative. You can clearly see that he's comfortable in the system. And yeah, when it comes to our defense and how we will hopefully beat Bremen is our defense is key. With Kobel being probably the best goalkeeper we had in the last, since Weidenfeller in his prime, we are looking good. We are looking very, very dangerous for any team up there. Obviously, Bayern is struggling, even though they got Cancelo and that's going to help them massively with their issues in terms of their possession style of football. But I'm still not convinced that Bayern will be what we used them to be, because they are lacking a significant threat up front. And as long as we keep it close, we have chances. We absolutely can beat Frankfurt, as we've shown in September last year. We can definitely hang with Leipzig, and I think we can absolutely hang with Bayern. So if we keep it close, see how Frankfurt and Leipzig perform in the Champions League, it's going to be an open title race, which is something that I think every German football fan wants to see. And yeah,
absolutely. But as I said, before you really talk about a title race, you absolutely need to defeat Werder Bremen. So
yes.
What makes Werder Bremen such a tricky team to play this season? Because I rarely see them being shellacked. They are pretty much always in the game. Obviously, they've conceded 37 goals, and I said league's 3rd worst defense. So obviously, if you're a Bremen fan, you're probably dumbfounded of how this team manages to concede goals. And I mean, they've been shellacked a couple of times. They lost 6-1 to Bayern Munich. They lost 7-1 to Cologne. I think that was the first game of 2023, if I'm not mistaken, which was kind of hilarious. But apart from that, they lost 2-1 to Union Berlin, and then recently they beat Wolfsburg 2-1, and then a 2-0 win against VfB Stuttgart. So if I'm a Dortmund fan, I'm cautiously optimistic that Dortmund can win this, just based on the form that Dortmund are in right now. But then again, Werder Bremen have a few weapons that can really hurt them, and I was already talking about their striker duo, and oftentimes to beat Dortmund, all you need to do is play a long ball over the top, and if you have a striker that can sort of lay it off to another player, then Dortmund are often in trouble. So how do you think Dortmund can actually avoid another trip up against Werder Bremen?
I think if we start with Schlotterbeck and Süle, that would be the key against a, as you said, quite physical duo up front in Dux and especially Füllkrug. I think Füllkrug is, if we're being honest, probably the best German striker we currently have, or traditional striker as we know it. Bremen is a tricky team. Bremen is not very good at anything. It's just a solid and a well-coached team. Lucky for us, their captain Friedl will be out with his 5th yellow, probably going to be replaced maybe by Velkovic. And having someone like Amos Pieper also in the defense, they will be susceptible to quick wingers. I mean, for us, it will be important to get definitely pace onto our wings. With Adeyemi still being out, and Bynoe-Gittens definitely having to potentially sit out, because, as you said before, against Bochum, you could clearly see that he's still lacking the intensity of professional football. Most likely Reina will start. It depends on what we'll do with someone like Moukoko, because currently there is already noises coming out that he is not happy with the game time that he currently gets. And it's going to be interesting to see if Alea starts. If he starts, who is going to play around him? I hope, because I think we spoke about this a couple of times, that we would really like to see Alea and Moukoko together. And maybe in Bremen it will be a perfect time to potentially unleash the best duo we currently have up front. But yeah, as I said, with Friedl out, there will be opportunity for us to score. I suspect that Rafael Guerreiro will be back against Bremen, because even though they have a bit of pace, he won't be as big of a liability defensively against Bremen. So I see him coming back. He scored against them. I think he scored against Bremen a couple of years back as well. So he should be fresh. He should come back into the team. And yeah, I'm pretty positive and optimistic that we at least get a draw on Bremen and just keep the good form up and see where we can go against Chelsea next week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also hoping for another Gio Reyna goal off the bench, because he scored his very first career goal for Dortmund in the cup against Werder Bremen, if I'm not mistaken, and that was an absolute outrageous strike. So if he could replicate that, I would not complain whatsoever. And we'll see what this game will bring. What's your scoreline prediction?
A 2-3.
All right, that was mine as well. So yeah, I'm also saying 2-3. And with that, I think we can move on to the Champions League. Of course, Chelsea will visit the Westfalenstadion first. Right now, they are 9th in the Premier League. And the They have a new coach, Thomas Tuchel, no longer at the helm. It is now, of course, Graham Potter, who, I think has struggled so much, is fair to say. But you are also here because you have a much closer eye on English football than I have, because, quite frankly, I am not watching a lot. It is quite funny and also disturbing to see how many players Chelsea have signed over this winter transfer window. I think their investment was north of 400 million euros, maybe even 500. Yes. I'm not entirely sure how much they spent, but they did sign Enzo Fernandez, Mikhailo Mudryk, Bynoe-Gittens, Noni Madueke, and Joao Felix. And I think also David Facho Fofana and Andres Santos. So a very long list, but we don't really have to care about most of them because as the rules are, Chelsea could only nominate 3 players, and Potter has chosen Enzo Fernandez, Mudryk, and Joao Felix. So obviously 3 good players, but as I said before, Chelsea are struggling a little bit. I don't know how that will translate to the Premier League. I think their most recent game has been a scoreless draw against Fulham. So, what can Dortmund fans expect? Because I would say that just on paper they might not go into this game as favorites. However, I'm seeing a lot of optimism on Twitter among Dortmund fans about this matchup. So maybe you can add some perspective here that I clearly am lacking.
I think what you just mentioned regarding Graham Potter is probably our biggest advantage, because unfortunately for us, Thomas Tuchel is a great coach, and the fact that when Todd Boehly purchased Chelsea, his first move was to get rid of the coach that actually won you the Champions League is absolutely asinine.
It sounds pretty stupid.
Looking back, it's probably the stupidest decision that they made in the last couple of years, because they didn't really give him the budget to invest. And what did they do after he left? They basically spent further £300 million to get good players, but not world-class players. And as you said, only 3 of them were able to get nominated. And unfortunately, our old friend Aubameyang was left out of the Champions League squad, so we won't see him, which is quite sad. But yeah, I think Chelsea is probably the biggest question mark in the Premier League currently, even with a team like Liverpool struggling, because Chelsea is... I've watched 2 games of them recently, and they're terrible. They're absolutely terrible. There's no structure in the game. They don't really create chances. It's a very, very underwhelming performance after another. And even it was quite funny, because coming back to Graham Potter, I think a couple of months back when he took over the job at Chelsea, Roy Keane famously said when he was asked who are the 3 best coaches in the Premier League, for some reason he mentioned Graham Potter as one of them, and he is not a great coach. He is someone like, I would compare him maybe to a Lucien Favre, a basic coach who can do some good stuff with a mid-table team, but he's completely out of his depth at Chelsea. And yeah, I suspect Chelsea will play a very slow style of football, even though they have incredible pace with Mudryk, as you said, Sterling up front. Even someone like Fofana that they just recently got is rapid.
Yeah, and Ziyech is also very slow.
Exactly. And Ziyech would have been someone that I would have liked to see at Dortmund, but a couple of years back, not now. But you have to be very careful the way you defend Chelsea, because there's a lot of creativity, pace, and scoring ability up front. But in general, it's not a great team currently. And we definitely got quite lucky when you compare Chelsea with the other options that we potentially had at the draw. So I'm quite optimistic that our Champions League run will continue after this one.
Well, there are two things to note is that the Champions League, as you all know, no longer has the away goal rule. So that I think can be positive or negative. But I think it's important to note. And the other thing that I'm not 100% sure if he's going to be out, but most likely Christian Pulisic for our American listeners. I think he's going to miss the first leg definitely because he picked up an injury. I think was it the first game back or so when he was tackled in the box. And I don't know about the other injuries. I don't know if N'Golo Kante is going to be out. I don't know if Dennis Zakaria is going to be out. How long they will be out for.
I don't think they're going to miss Zakaria in particular.
Yeah. But it interesting that Zakaria is right now in Chelsea not really doing much. I know that Dortmund wanted to sign him, or at least Zorc wanted to sign him on a free transfer from Gladbach. But that, of course, did not pan out. Would you take him right now if Chelsea would make him available to offload him from their, let's call it a bloated squad, because it's certainly what they are? Or would you rather go for, say, Mateo Kovacic, who I wanted to see at Dortmund for a very long time? Not entirely sure if I would do now.
I mean, obviously, I would always take Mateo Kovacic over almost anyone on the Chelsea squad currently. And if you ask me if I would take Zakaria, I would rather start Emre Can over Zakaria right now, if I'm being honest. Because I don't think Zakaria fits our needs. We have some limited players in Salih Özcan and even Emre Can in this holding midfield position. Zakaria he's too injury prone for me to come to Dortmund. We don't need a player like him, honestly.
Would you take Kovacic maybe as a Bellingham replacement? I mean, Kovacic is 28, but to me, he's still a decent player.
I think that we have this dream of finding a new Gündoğan.
Yes.
And if you look around the Premier League, who could potentially be available, who has a similar skill set, and who can also be a scoring threat at times, just outside of the box, Kovacic he would be brilliant. He would be a fantastic acquisition, but getting him, I don't see any chance how we can do that.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. But you know, a guy can dream.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, from a Dortmund's perspective, what do they have to do in order to beat this Chelsea team?
You got to defend well, and I don't think that this is going to be much different from the game that we just played against Bochum. I don't see Guerreiro doing too well against the pace that Chelsea can bring onto the pitch. Defending Mudryk is tough. He's rapid. You have Sterling, as you said. Ziyech has pace. Even their midfielders have a lot of pace, and they will play quite defensively because they are not creating a lot of chances. They will sit back, they will wait, and it's going to be a waiting game. I would not be shocked if it's going to be a very low scoring game at Dortmund, even if potentially a 0-0. And then you go to Chelsea, you go to the Stamford Bridge, and then you just have to tough it out. And obviously hope that Chelsea is not finding any rhythm in the next couple of weeks, but I don't see that happening.
Well, the problem with football is that you just never know when teams catch form, because if you had asked me how Dortmund would fare starting into this year, I probably would have not predicted what has unfolded so far. So, I would have been wrong. Certainly, the 5-1 win against Freiburg looked quite promising. And to be honest, I'm always feeling encouraged when Dortmund play at home in the Champions League, just because the Westfalenstadion has been such a stronghold for Dortmund, and usually they have found ways to win these kind of games, especially if you have a healthy Marco Reus. He's usually very vital. He scores very important Champions League goals. And Sebastian Aller, we almost forget, but he, of course, was the top goal scorer of the Champions League in the previous season. So, having him return to the Königsklasse is something that I personally am also very much looking forward to. And after Greg Berhalter said that the United States don't have a player that scores in the Champions League right now, he all but guaranteed that Gio Reyna will definitely score somehow in this game as well. So, maybe...
How do you think he's going to... Sorry, how do you think he's going to celebrate?
Yeah, I think it's going to be another Memphis Depay celebration, if you ask me. So, very funny to me, but I don't know. I'm very positive right now because Dortmund just have the cohesion that is necessary to defend well in such games and more importantly, create chances. I think that Chelsea will be very impressed with the entire just atmosphere noise that the Westfalenstadion can produce on a Champions League night. These nights will always be special. And so I personally am just very much looking forward to it. And obviously you are always worried about the individual skill on the other side. Obviously it's going to be a matchup between Julian Brandt and Kai Havertz, who are pretty much best friends as well. So that's another storyline to keep an eye out for. In the meantime, I think Dortmund have to make sure that their fullbacks, especially Wolf and Ryerson, stay healthy after the Bremen game, because as you said to me, they are absolute key figures right now. Marius Wolf with his forward momentum on the right side and Ryerson on the left. The dynamic we now have from both fullbacks positions is something we haven't seen in quite a while. And of course, you can always play Rafael Guerreiro if you must, because he can do certain things well. And who knows, maybe we'll score a set piece goal here and there too, because we of course did not do that against Bochum, but we were very successful of course against Freiburg. And who knows if the same feat doesn't work against Chelsea, because in the Champions League, set piece goals often also make the difference, just as Jose Mourinho. And so, another aspect, another weapon in Dortmund's game. So I personally am feeling relatively positive, albeit knowing that Chelsea, of course, have so many world-class players or high-class players in their team that they can just create something pretty much out of nothing without having, a nice tactical setup.
That's true. But again, I'm just looking at the schedule for Chelsea in the next coming weeks, and they're going to struggle. It's going to be some tough games for them, and they will be under a lot of pressure if they don't perform against Dortmund as well, because you don't invest £500 million a year to lose against Dortmund in the last round, the round of last 16. So there's going to be a lot of pressure for Graham Potter and the Chelsea team. But yeah, as you said, having pace in the back, potentially not playing Hummels would most likely help against Chelsea, and then you got to see who they play up front. If it's going to be Kai Havertz or Joao Felix, because if they play with Felix, it's going to be a bit different to defend, or because if they play with Havertz, they're going to be a bit more stationary. And Havertz, even though he has learned to deal with the physicality here in the UK, I don't think people expected him to be where he is right now, because he is a little bit stuck in his development. And yeah, Chelsea is definitely beatable. And as I said, like comparing Chelsea to the other options that we could have had, it's a good draw. And if we keep the momentum up next couple of weeks, we should go through, definitely.
Yeah, so Chelsea do play this weekend against West Ham United, who themselves are 17th. Yeah, they're 17th in the Premier League. And the 3 games in between the second leg will be against Southampton, Tottenham, and then Leeds United, who also just had a coaching change. I don't have it in front of me who Dortmund play in that time period. I can tell you that they are playing against Werder Bremen this Saturday, and then it's going to be also very tricky because they then play Hertha at home, Hoffenheim away, and then before the second leg they do play RB Leipzig at home, which is another key game. And right after the Chelsea game, you have the Revier Derby against Schalke, which is arguably the last derby, and you must absolutely win that one, because if it's the last derby, you have to win it. those are the rules. So yeah, the program for Dortmund going forward, absolutely not easy either. But right now, I think we can be at least confident that Hertha and Hoffenheim could be 6 points, right? Because Hoffenheim are one of the most one of the worst struggling teams, really, and Hertha also, yeah, I don't know. I'm not really impressed by them either. They are also right where Hoffenheim are, and yeah, we'll see, of course, how the Leipzig game will go, but that's of course at the beginning of March, so we still have a couple of more episodes in between. Danny, anything else you want to say about this game, or do you want to honor me with a scoreline prediction?
I don't think there's a lot to say anymore about the Chelsea game because, as I've said, it's a big question mark. You don't know what's going to happen with Chelsea, and yeah, as I've said, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game at home. Chelsea is famous for their 0-0 draw these days, and I'm a bit more optimistic, so I'll say 1-0 to Dortmund with, obviously, just for you, Gio Reyna will score.
All right, I'm a bit more optimistic, but I don't think the scoreline will be that much different. I do think it's going to be a 2-1. So basically the same, but at least we will see 2 Dortmund goals. So we have something more to celebrate. But yeah, I see Marco Reus scoring as well next to Gio Reyna. But yeah, as you said, we shall see. Again, Danny, thank you very much for coming on and lending your expertise. It was a fun little chat about the black and yellows, and I hope we can do it again soon. But in the meantime, we shall be back after the Chelsea game with another episode to then also, of course, preview the Hertha game and yeah, go from there. Once again, thank you, Danny, for coming on, and everyone out there, thank you for listening. Until next time, goodbye.